Welcome everyone to Gamer Melt. Today, a GPU was sent like what? AMD's new desktop APU just broke a ton of records. The RX 6600 XT is selling for insane prices, but I've got some exclusive info from a contact of mine, so wait for that. And pricing for next-gen GPUs look to be outrageous. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, a pretty huge mistake was recently spotted by a user on Reddit. In the post, he noticed some blue strips of paper when looking at their new RX 6700 XT. The user decided to open it up, and as you can see, power color actually left on the adhesive covers over the thermal pads. Luckily, as video cards mentioned, someone at the power color factory likely just forgot to remove the covers, meaning this is almost certainly a one-off issue. But of course, if you purchased a power color 6700 XT, I'd at least double check you don't see any blue strips before installing it. Luckily for this user, they ignored the warning label about a voided warranty and opened up the GPU to check it out. Of course, I wouldn't suggest doing that if you do see something like this unless you absolutely know what you're doing and you're willing to void the warranty. With that said, I would like to think power color would fix it regardless, but let's just hope it was in fact a one-off. Now it's time to get the VPN that pays for itself with today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. And you heard that right. Not only do you get the security of a VPN that encrypts your data, disguises your IP address, etc., but Atlas VPN can save you tons of money on things like airline tickets, Netflix, Spotify, and more. Basically, many worldwide companies will adjust their prices based on geographical regions. Just clear your history, use Atlas VPN to change your location, and you can save tons of money. Streaming services do something similar by restricting what movies and shows you can watch based on your location. And once again, you can use Atlas VPN to open up hundreds of shows. And what's better is that you can get all of this for just $1.39 a month for 3 years when you use my link in the description below. Plus that includes a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy. So you've got nothing to lose. Next up for today, one of AMD's newest desktop APUs just broke a bunch of records. And of course, two of AMD's newest 5000G APUs were recently launched at the DIY market. Now, with that said, this story is in regards to the quad-core Ryzen 3 5300G, which is unfortunately still only available to system integrators. As Tom's Hardware said, AMD likely decided to release their higher margin parts to the DIY market first, given all the shortages this year. Either way, the APU was just overclocked to a pretty incredible 5.5 GHz, which is a huge jump from the rated 4.2 GHz boost. The overclock was done by the user SafeDisk, and he broke a few world records for a quad-core CPU. Starting things off, I will say that the 5.5 GHz was the maximum overclock, but the stability wasn't good enough for all the tests. At 5.4 GHz, he broke the Y-Cruncher record against the i7-7740X that was clocked at a whopping 6.4 GHz. Next, he broke the record on Geekbench at 5.2 GHz, and finally, in GPU PI, beating the 7740X at over 7 GHz, proving that clocks aren't everything when it comes to CPUs. Of course, these were done using liquid nitrogen, but still, the clocks were so much higher than stock, it really brings us back to the days when overclocking gave a massive performance boost. Next up, if you've been following the channel, you know GPU prices have been a roller coaster over the past year. Late last year, pricing shot way up, then it finally looked to be going down, until eventually seemed to level out. Well, they're clearly still ridiculous given scalpers have already tried to sell the upcoming RX 6600 XT for over $1,000. That's right, a new listing was recently found on Newegg where the GPU was actually being sold for a whopping $1,099. And don't forget that we're talking about an MSRP of $379, so around 3 times the price. Now, I will say that it looks like Newegg took the listing down, which isn't a big surprise given it's still under embargo. Regardless, if you see any kind of pricing like this, please don't buy it. For one, it was probably so high because it's not out yet, but come launch, I have no doubt scalpers will try to get away with this. Don't let them. And not just because it encourages them to keep doing it, but one of my contacts have said there should be a lot of 6600 XT GPUs come launch. Not only that, but they should actually be sold for around MSRP. I will say I couldn't get any hard numbers from my contact, but anything is better than this. Of course, I doubt it will be enough to fill demand, but we've also heard rumors that Nvidia is stockpiling RTX 3060s for this launch, so there's almost no way you'll have to pay this kind of price. Oh, and I will be doing a release stream on the 11th where I'll run some live tests of the GPU and we'll watch the actual launch, so make sure to check that out. And lastly for today, we finally get an idea of the pricing for AMD's next-gen GPUs. And it's not pretty. So far, we've seen leak after leak on AMD's RDNA 3 GPUs over the last few months. Remember that RDNA 3 is the upcoming RX 7000 GPUs, or whatever they end up being called. Basically, they're next-gen cards. Either way, tons of leaks have shown that RDNA 3 will actually use an MCM-based design, essentially meaning more than one GPU module will be attached on a single die, and it's done in a way that the OS essentially looks at it as one GPU, so you won't have to worry too much about support like you did with Crossfire or SLI. This is great because it allows for easily scalable cards. Remember that the bigger a chip gets, the higher chance something goes wrong, so your yield rates suffer and costs drastically go up. The only issue with the RX 7000 parts is that leaks have suggested a pretty huge number of cores for the high end, yet there are only 2 GPU modules. Meaning an MCM design is the only way you could get this, but you're still looking at something similar to say 2 6900 XTs put together, so it could still be really expensive. Well, we now have our first idea of what pricing could look like. In a new tweet from 3dcenter.org, they go over information from the leaker Bondrude. In the leak, he suggests we could be looking at around $450 for the Navi 33 GPU. Now, that may not seem too bad, but keep in mind that Navi 33 should be AMD's RX 7600 XT. So we're talking their mid-range part, and that would make it nearly $100 more than AMD's 6600 XT, and that was already more expensive than last gen. Now, there is some good news. According to this, the 7600 XT should be around the performance of AMD's current Navi 21. We're talking around 6800 XT level of performance, so you could look at it as getting a current high-end GPU for less, but it's still worrisome to see GPUs continuously move up in price. Let's just hope by then that stock will finally be back to normal. So while that does it for today, are you excited for AMD's next-gen GPUs, or are you just worried about pricing? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe. And as always, have a great day!